Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the channel. Leo here. And once again, my friends, we find ourselves on a desolate road in the middle of nowhere. Of course, this one is a little bit different. This one here is a mountain pass here in the southern hills of Appalachia. We have quite a few of these. This one, I can remember when just the last few decades it's been paved. We've got several of these. There's one called Dinky Road, and it's dinky, that's for sure. It's definitely dinky. But I will have to ask you guys to bear with me. There's, I believe it's a natural gas facility right over there. Sounds like they've got a generator running. So I will have to ask you guys to bear with me on that one. We're not really here for any of that. We're here for that. We're here to find someone. We're here to tell you guys a story from yesteryear. A story about a man. Very interesting story about a man who was not rich or famous, but he still had a very short, very interesting life. And I'm actually very familiar with this little area right here. This right here, this little dirt road at the top of this goes out to an outlaw area, trail riding, that we used to go hang out at a lot. I've camped back in there, trail riding. You know, I've been way back in through there. But we're not here for any of that either. Like I said, I just happen to know exactly where this cemetery was. Now the road, I guess you can see there's a few cars here. This is paved now, but back in my younger days, this was a dirt road. And you know, I'm sure the generations before that used this mountain pass often. Quite frankly, you know how other places, the Himalayas, out west in the Rockies, they've got really tall mountains. Here, 2,000, 2,500 foot is fairly tall mountain, but you have one after another, after another, after another. There's an old saying here that it doesn't matter where you're going because it's uphill and downhill both ways. And to be honest, that's pretty accurate. I think I've made the joke that you got to cross two mountains to go from my living room to the bathroom. I've actually made that joke before. But that's where we are. We are right on the peak of this little skinny mountain pass that used to be an old horse trail. But as time progresses and progress rolls on, it gets widened out and gets paved eventually, but it still follows the same old path. This is Peter Fork Holler on this side, Peter Fork Mountain, and Pounding Mill Road. If you go down to the bottom, this becomes Pounding Mill Road. It used to be an old mill, you know, down on the creek. It's how, you know, places like that get their names. But there's like a super steep, one lane, obviously, super steep horseshoe shaped turn that, I mean, you go down. It's really steep. But anyway, like I said, we are not here for any of this stuff. I just kind of thought I'd kind of give you guys a lay of the land, you know, where we are and that sort of thing. But I believe it's a natural gas facility. I could be wrong. Sounds like a generator running. But anyway, we have someone to find. We have a story to tell you guys. The reason we came out here today is right up there. Now, I looked at this on Google Earth last night, and to be honest, I'm fairly sure I know where I'm going. I was looking at it. I believe I think that might even be it right there in the center. I don't know yet. But anyway, I guess nothing to do now but, you know, kind of get up there and go find it. I've done told you guys, you know, where we're at and all this stuff. So I guess there's nothing left to do but get up there, go find the old grave, and tell you guys the story. Let's go find him, and we'll see you up there. Well, just take a look at this. Old cemetery up here on top of the mountain. People still using the old mountain pass to get from point A to point B after all these years. But it's an old cemetery, very pretty, and I would imagine without the generator going over there, very peaceful place back up on top of this mountain up here. Very pretty, isn't it? Pine trees and everything in bloom, and you can see a lot of the older ones have been marked with blocks to indicate where a grave is, where it's an unknown person there. And you know, I've mentioned before, you know, that when you run across those, you know that all of those people, unless there's some family record, you know exactly where they're at, which space, and you know, unfortunately they're lost to time. You know, there's no names. A lot of the old records were never even kept. So, you know, it's just a shame. You figure that old tree right there, look at the size of that thing. It's probably been here and seen many, many, many people, many funerals, many heartaches, many services held right here. And it's probably the only witness left living to most of them. But I did find who we are looking for. I found who we came out here for today. Now this right here, I want you guys to meet someone. This young man right here is named Herman Mayhorn. Born January 13th, 1905 and died June 4th, 1929. Gone but not forgotten. And right there's a picture of Herman right on the stone. Now, this one over here factors in as well in a moment. Mel Mayhorn, it's short for Melvin, but if he, you know, he goes by Mel, he had Mel put on his stone, Mel it is. And Elizabeth Mayhorn right over here. Now, Mel was born 1881 and died in 1960, and Elizabeth in 1888 and died in 1980. A ripe old age. A ripe old age. But like I said, this man right here is the one that we've came for here today. Herman Mayhorn. Now I'm going to just get over here and, you know, get off the grave, get away from it a little bit, and just kind of make myself comfortable in the grass, in the walkway, and tell you guys a story. Now, in June of 1929, summer had settled into the Tug Valley here along the river at Red Jacket, Delorme, Edgerton, and the surrounding coal camps. The days were getting hot and humid, and miners headed underground before daylight, never knowing what to expect. The mine wars had ended only a few years earlier, but Mingo County was still a hard place to live and dominated by coal. Company houses crowded the narrow valley bottoms. Children played in the creeks, and nearly every family depended on the mines for a living. The coal companies provided work, but the mountains demanded a heavy price. Today's story is about a normal person just like you and me. Now, like I said, his name was Herman Mayhorn, and it's also worth mentioning the family that he came from. Like many stories here in the Tug Valley, this one circles back to the Hatfield-McCoy feud and reminds us just how small the area really is. You see, Herman was the son of Melvin Mayhorn, like I showed you. Now, Melvin's father, proper name, was Doc Mahan, a man whose name was tied to the Hatfield-McCoy feud. Doc was among the men who were convicted for their roles in the violence and actually spent time in prison for it. We actually found his grave not long ago in Beech Creek, West Virginia. But the connection goes deeper. Doc Mahan's wife was a Hatfield. She was the daughter of Valentine Hatfield, one of Devalance Hatfield's brothers. Valentine was also convicted and sent to prison following the feud. Unlike many of the others, though, he never made it back home to the mountains that he loved. He died behind prison walls, far from his family and the Tug Valley. His body was buried in the prison cemetery, but he was then supposedly moved when the cemetery was paved over and his grave was actually lost. So there's a good chance it's still sitting there paved over in reality. Not much is known about Herman's mother, Elizabeth Eldridge Mayhorn. Elizabeth used her mother's surname, Eldridge, and exactly who her biological father was is unknown. Like many Appalachian families from that era, some records are incomplete, conflicting, or simply lost to time or family disconnect, just like today. As a result, part of Elizabeth's story remains a mystery. Now, Herman appears to have been the firstborn child of a very large family. Records suggest Melvin and Elizabeth had at least 14 children, and there may have been even more. Now, as my mother can attest, growing up as the oldest child in a coalfield family often meant carrying adult responsibilities at a very young age, helping look after younger brothers and sisters while learning the hard realities of life here in the mountains. Another mystery appears in Herman's own records. Although he was only 25 years old when he died, his death certificate lists him as a widower. Strangely, online records connect Herman to a woman named Elise P. Fultz and 3 children. The children were born in Edgerton, where Herman died. After Herman's death, Elise appears in records living with the children alone. Now that raises an obvious question. If Elise survived Herman and was raising their children afterward, why was Herman listed as widowed on his death certificate? A widower is a man whose wife has already died. It can't be both. The answer may be a mistake by whoever supplied the information, a misunderstanding by the clerk, or maybe there's another part of the story that has been lost over time. For now, the record leaves us with more questions than answers. By 1929, the feud was decades in the past. The gunfire had faded and the trials were over. Most of the men who had lived through those events were growing old or had already passed away. But the connections remained. Herman Mayhorn grew up carrying pieces of that history in his own family tree, though his own life would be shaped not by the feud, but by the coal mines that dominated Mingo County. Deep underground, miners worked beneath tons of rock and slate. A shift could begin just like any other and turn deadly with zero warning. One loose section of roof, one falling slab of slate was enough to change lives forever. Every man who entered the mine understood that risk, but most of them didn't have any other choices. Their families depended on the paycheck. Herman here worked as a motorman in the mine. His job was to operate the electric mining cars that hauled coal, supplies, and sometimes coal miners through the dark entryways beneath the mountain. It was a very important job that required constant attention. The tracks could have problems, visibility was limited, and just one small mistake could lead to serious injury or death for you or your friends and coworkers. Motormen spent much of their day moving through the underground workings, carrying coal from the miners to where it could be loaded and taken out of the mine. A slate fall happens when a layer of rock, commonly called slate by coal miners, breaks loose from the roof of a mine and crashes down into the working area below. These falls can happen with little or no warning at all. A miner might hear a crack overhead, or he might hear nothing at all, before thousands of pounds of rock came crashing down on him, or even just enough to kill you. That's all it really takes. Before modern roof bolting became common, slate falls were among the most feared of the hazards that lie underground, and were responsible for countless injuries and deaths throughout the coal fields. On June 4th in 1929, around noon, as miners prepared for their lunch break, Herman Mayhorn was working underground in Edgerton, West Virginia, when something went wrong. A section of slate broke loose from the roof of the mine and came crashing down. In a split second, Herman's normal work day became a tragedy. In the same mountain that had provided jobs for generations of families had suddenly turned deadly. The falling slate hit Herman, causing injuries severe enough that he would not survive. News of the accident traveled quickly through the coal camps. Before long, word would have spread among the company houses through DeLorme, Edgerton, Red Jacket, and the surrounding communities that yet another coal miner had been hurt underground. But for the Mayhorn family, it meant real-life heartbreak. Melvin and Elizabeth had already raised a large family. Now their oldest son was gone forever. The loss was felt beyond just one household. Every mining community knew the fear that came with hearing that someone had been caught in a slate fall. Every miner knew that what happened to Herman could happen to any of them too at any time on any shift. The dangers were always there, waiting just above their heads in the darkness. In the end, Herman Mayhorn was not taken by the feud, a gunfight, or even a courtroom. He was taken by the coal mines that employed so many Appalachian men. Just like countless others whose names have faded from memory, he left for work expecting to return home that day, but he never did. And now, nearly a century later, his story remains just another reminder of how often the history of these mountains ties together. The same family names appear again and again. The same hollers, just like this one, connect one generation to the next. The same mountains that provided a living also demanded huge sacrifices. Herman Mayhorn became one of those sacrifices on a June afternoon in 1929 when a slate fall underground brought his short life to an end. Today, we honor and remember Herman and tell his story. Now, what did I tell you? Did I not tell you that it was a remarkable story? kind of hard to imagine, isn't it? Living the life that Herman lived, and Mel and Elizabeth all those years ago back here in southern West Virginia, when this place was, I mean, it's pretty wild now. West Virginia is still known to be wild and free, you know, wild and wonderful. But it was also known to be really wild and really, really hard. Beautiful place, isn't it? The pretty final resting place for Herman and his parents. Well, I'm going to go ahead and document some of this while I'm here. There's a Marcus. I'm going to look around a little bit and just see who we see, since we're already here. But I do want to just show Herman's grave one more time. A story worth being remembered. And a young man, a life ended a lot sooner than it should be in a coal mine. Until the next time, guys, this is Leo with the Hillbilly Files. We'll see y'all a little bit later. Y'all have a good day. And Leo out.